Hello everybody, I'm back with another Iron Man action figure review from the latest Iron Man retro carded wave from Marvel Legends, and it's time to pick up on another villain. It is of course Whiplash, and this is a long awaited version of this character because of course this is a comic book accurate version of the character as seen certainly in the 90s, I think the 80s and possibly the 70s as well. Anyway, it is a fairly iconic costume look for this particular character, and it's amazing that we haven't really had Whiplash in the Marvel Legends line before, so it's really fantastic to see this version of the character here at long last. So if we start off by taking a look at the packaging, this brings gladness to my heart. I love this. This is of course a retro card, as you'll see from the other figures in this wave, harking all the way back to the Toy Biz line of the 1990s, which in and of itself was closely associated with the animated series, of which Whiplash in this costume was a major feature. And of course we actually got this figure in this packaging all those years ago, so this is tremendous to see this reimagined with all the fantastic articulation and just oversized packaging to what we had all those years ago. So I love this. I think it looks fantastic on display. You hand this on your wall and it looks great. If we flip it over and look at the reverse, yeah, there's less to write home about here. Fully acknowledge that this is a little bit more bland, and it is a shame that we've got this big space dedicated to a diagram of the figure showing how to swap out the various accessories, which seems a little unnecessary. We could have had some really nice artwork here. I was really excited to get my hands on this figure. Probably of all the figures in the wave, this is the one I probably most wanted alongside the She-Hulk. So fantastic to finally have it in hand. If we start off by taking a look at the head sculpt, this appears to be a brand new head sculpt. I don't think we've seen this before, so that's really cool. I think they've done a decent job with some of the paint apps. They've actually got a little bit of a wash around the eyes there to add a little bit of darkness, which just adds that little bit more depth and texture there, which is great. Otherwise there's not an awful lot of features here, but it looks pretty cool. I think we do need to talk about the hair, of course. This is actually a separate piece that plugs in to the back of the head through a peg there. It's not the best executed. There's a little bit of a gap, and you can see where what should be the band is just painted green, and that really needs to be painted black to differentiate it. So it looks a little bit odd, and it just feels like, oh, they've just missed that little detail. Otherwise, the hair itself actually has some nice washes running through it, so it actually has a little bit of depth there, which is cool. And I think, this works for the most part, and I'm pretty happy with the overall presentation. If we look at the body sculpt, we can see that they've just recycled one of the perennial sculpts that they've used many times over. That's absolutely fine. I don't mind that. There are a few details that obviously are unique to the character. It's great to see those arced gauntlets. They look pretty cool. And of course, he does have the unique chain and cape there. Now, we are seeing some parts recycled, so this satchel that he has is clearly taken from the Green Goblin and various hobgoblins in recent years, so a shame to see that again, but it works. I think it's appropriate, so I'm not going to complain about that. It's a nice piece, and it works absolutely fine. What I am disappointed by is just the lack of paint washes that we're seeing on the body here. A real shame that there's just nothing at all, so it's just matte black, which is, it's fine, but it just makes the figure feel a little bit cheap somehow. Speaking of cheap, if we look at the cape, again, this is moulded into place, much as we saw with Count Nefaria. It's a different sculpt, but, it's not really got much in the way of paint apps, so it feels a little bit, lacking in detail, and it is sculpted into one hard piece, so it's not really particularly flexible, and yeah, it's not the best. Certainly, when it comes to articulation, it presents a few challenges. If we look at the boots again, I think this actually is a unique piece. I don't recall seeing the sort of specialist boots that he's got here, so I think they look pretty cool. Sadly, no paint apps to really draw out any details here, but at least this does look fresh and different. So articulation wise, there is a ball joint in the top of the neck there, allowing the head to spin all the way around. Now you're going to come up to a little bit of hindrance when it comes to that hair piece at the back, but you can get around that for the most part. It will wobble side to side, and he can hinge his head forwards and backwards a good distance too. Now he's got ball joints in the shoulders, sadly no butterfly wing joint, but his arms will lift up and out. There's the complementary bicep swivel, a double joint at the elbow, allowing that hand to arc all the way back, which is great, and then we have the standard pivot at the wrist there, allowing the hand to rotate it all the way around, and of course hinge forwards and backwards. Another straight swivel at the waist, so the figure will move from side to side, and we have that standard ab crunch in the centre of the abdomen there, allowing him to bend forwards a good distance. He can bend backwards, but that cape is not going to really allow you to do much with that, unfortunately. Now he's got ball joints in the hips, so the legs will kick out to the side. There's that thigh swivel at the top of the thigh there, which is good. There's also another swivel, this time at the top of the boot cut as well, which looks pretty cool. The leg will kick forwards, it will go backwards. There's a double joint at the knee there, allowing that lower leg to kick all the way back, which is pretty nice. Again, you're going to have some challenges here because of that cape, which is always frustrating. And then there is the ankle rocker, allowing that foot to pivot from side to side and hinge forwards and backwards. In terms of accessories then, he comes with an additional pair of gripping hands and of course his whiplash, and this is a particularly nice piece actually, because this is a translucent plastic to create that energy beam effect, which works really well, and it has a golden hilt, and it actually is quite flexible as well, which is great, and that's going to be really important for the various poses you're going to want to put this character in. And I have to say, he is pretty striking when you put him on display, especially if you're able to get him to hold that whip effectively. The only challenge I found in this area is that there is a tendency for the whip to be a little bit top heavy, so it will the joint on the hand can be a little bit loose, meaning that it tends to rotate a little bit too easily, and it will downturn and touch the ground rather than stay up in the air more often than I'd like. So that is a little bit of a challenge, but for the most part this works really well, and I think it does look really very cool. Especially when we start adding this into the collection and put him in displays with other figures, you're able to manipulate that whip so that it can actually wrap around some of the other characters, and it looks really cool. Actually, I have to say, I think that's really effective, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So for me, I'm happy to give this figure 4 stars. Now, I've got to be honest, I did sort of teeter between 3 and 4 for this figure. Overall, I think it deserves the 4 stars because, well, it's the first time we've seen this character in this version of his costume, which is fantastic. So really glad to finally have him represented here, which is brilliant. He does have a really cool accessory, which is unique to this figure, which I think is also, worthy of mention. And, I think the overall presentation is really quite fun. The articulation is fine. It's not the best, but it's certainly not the worst in the line, and I think it works for the most part. So why have I knocked off a star, or was I tempted to knock off 2? Well, as usual, there's some real lack of effort when it comes to the paint apps. It would be nice if they just had a little bit of a wash running through these figures just to draw out some of the detail and what are really nice sculpts otherwise. And then the cape is a little bit frustrating. Again, as we saw with Count Nefaria, it's a little bit of a blocker when it comes to posing in interesting poses, and it's just a little bit inflexible. It just lacks a little bit of detail, again, lacking those paint apps, and yeah, I feel like there must be another way of approaching this to make this more effective and more pleasing. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider giving the video a like. That kind of thing really does help the channel out, and it allows me to keep making more content. And if you're interested in seeing more content, remember to hit subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos coming soon.